time. Welcome, everyone. My name is Claudia Zaborski. I'm with the Office for Victims of Crime Training and Technical Assistance Center. You probably just saw something pop up on your screen that we are recording today's session for learning purposes. This won't be posted, so feel free to ask questions. Also, you'll see a thing at the top of your screen that there is closed captioning and transcripts available. Today, Bess Hoskins is going to be on our digital kind of tech support, and Bess just dropped a note in the chat there. So if you have any challenges with audio, go ahead and let Bess know throughout today, or you can email her at bhoskins@ovcttac.org. Like I said, my name is Claudia, and we are here today with the City of Rockford Mayor's Office bringing us kind of the second in a series of trainings today. We have Detective Chad Opitz from Beaverton Police Department, so extra props to him because it's 7 a.m. where he is. So he's joining us very early this morning, so thank you, Chad. But before we get started, just want to go ahead and let's just wake up a little bit. If everybody could just make sure that the chat is working, just say hello. Have you had coffee, tea, Diet Coke? What's going on? How's the weather? You know, all the things. Just want to make sure that everybody's connected. Okay. And Chad, are you going to share your screen with the TTAC, or do you want me to start off with that?
I I will do it right now.
Okay, great.
And
And once again, we want to thank Emily Schmidt from the City of Rockford Mayor's Office for bringing this to the City of Rockford. We're really excited to be bringing this information to you. Water and Mountain Dew, always a winning combo. So before we get started, just wanted to bring you a little bit of information about how Emily found us. So the Office for Victims of Crime is actually, as you can see, the mission is to enhance the nation's capacity to assist crime victims and to provide leadership in changing attitudes, policies, and practices in ways that'll promote justice for all. So OVC was actually created in 1984 to enhance victim rights and services for survivor victims throughout the country. It is a federal agency. We're under the Department of Justice, and the OVC funding agency for crime victims compensation and victim assistance programs. And so a lot of you work in those agencies that may receive VOCA money to provide direct services to victims of crime. And also what's important is that OVC, Department of Justice, want to bring committed to the professionalization of the crime victim services field through trainings like this and best practices and promising practices to the field. So that's a little bit about OVC. And then, Chad, if you don't mind forwarding the next slide, awesome. Who I work for, we are the training and technical assistance arm of Office for Victims of Crime. And so Emily actually reached out to us, thank you, Emily, to bring you all this training to the City of Rockford on human trafficking and online exploitation. And I just want to point out that if you are a victim service provider, you can get free training and technical assistance. And we can provide subject matter experts to your organization on a myriad of topics. And as you can see here, we use several different ways to do that, both in person and virtual. So again, it's free. And Chad, if you could go to the next one. Awesome. So just a few things. We will have an evaluation at the end, and we always are looking for feedback from the field. So please take the time to fill out that evaluation. If you have additional questions, at the end I'll also provide my contact information. So if you are interested in more, learning more about how you can get free training and technical assistance to your agency, certainly we're more than happy to chat through that. Emily has my contact information as well, so you can reach out to Emily Schmidt in the mayor's office. Today, you're good to go. You can forward it, Chad. Today, I'm going to turn it over to Detective Chad Opitz from Beaverton Police. He's going to be using some interactivity, so discussions. Feel free to use the chat function, or if you want to come offline, just put your hand up and I'll be monitoring the chat, and that way we can keep the discussion flowing. And if we miss a question or he doesn't answer it, I'm going to be kind of capturing some questions and we'll circle back towards the end if we miss it. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Chad. Thanks so much, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you again for being here. I'm an early riser, so being here at 7 doesn't. I start work at 5:30 out here, so this should be my wheelhouse, but no promises. And we will be taking breaks and making sure you folks can stretch, and because I don't want you to have to listen to me for 3 consecutive hours, like anybody would like that. A little bit about me. I have been in law enforcement for about 24 years. Next month will be 24 years. I've been doing child exploitation and trafficking cases since 2006. So been doing this for a while. I say that I don't know everything about these areas. I'm comfortable talking about them, comfortable teaching on these types of topics. But again, things, especially because I'm in the Pacific Northwest and Oregon, and maybe the way that we do things or what you folks see is different than what we see. And that's why I enjoy going around and teaching in different cities and around the country. So I enjoy that feedback and to have dialogue with folks about trafficking related cases and everything. So as we go through the presentation, there'll be times when I'm going to be asked opinions and thoughts and what you maybe think about things or encounter and you see, or maybe you don't agree with, and that's fine. If it's things that you'd say, well, I don't really agree with Chad on that. Let's have healthy conversations about it, because that's ultimately, and you'll kind of see it as we get more to the end, we talk about working together and collaboration and working with our allied professionals and the victim assistance people. That's how that's how we overcome hurdles. So all that being said, I'm going to kind of turn and burn. And I know Claudia said that if you raise your hand, I kind of, we already had the discussion that multitasking isn't my best thing. And I'm reminded that multitasking is not a thing. I'm told that by my wife and other people. So I'm going to agree with that. Multitasking is not a thing. So all that being said, if you raise your hand, or if you want to have a question, just feel free and let them know, and they'll probably see it before I will. So my main thing when I start off all my presentations that I give, I'm going to kind of slide this chat box down and just get out of my view. Why are you here? I'm hoping everyone is here. And let me look at how many numbers we have. I see 48 participants. So not counting the people that help organize, we have roughly around 44 people that are here on this training. I'm hoping that you're here because you want to be here. I'm hoping that that is something you chose, whatever your profession is, that is whatever group you work with, or part of this, the whole makeup of trafficking cases, that you're here because you want to work these cases. And normally when I'm in person, I will ask people, okay, show of hands of people that were told to be here. And it's a little difficult here, but I guess if you really want to volunteer that, to say that, hey, you know what? I was told to be here. It wasn't my first option. And the reason I say that is that the victims, regardless of how they came into the life and their circumstances, those victims deserve that, regardless of even their attitude. And let's say they're a 16-year-old that says, you know what, I don't mind doing this. I want to be doing that. I want to be doing trafficking. Well, or be involved in doing dates. Victims deserve to have people involved with these cases that want to help and want to do the best we can to remove them and put them in a new path forward. And I call that with them making a new normal, because the normal that these victims and ultimately survivors they're experiencing, their life is completely different than what we have generally. So making a new normal is making a new foundation and wanting to take, that's something that we want to do for them, because you're going to get your end product pretty much everything that we do, you get in, or you get what you put into it. So if you go half-assed, sorry for my language, but if you go half-assed into this, those victims, the people that are involved with that we have cases on, what do they do for, and a lot of their day and kind of what's going through in their life? They read people. They read Johns, they read traffickers, they read maybe people looking down on them. So if you're going in half-assed, they're going to say, well, Chad doesn't care about me, so why do I care about what? Why should I get out of something where why should I do what Chad wants when he could honestly care less about me? So that's kind of my overview on as we get into the presentation. And if you're offended by the content of the presentation, I apologize for that. I do tell people sometimes when we go over these things, it does trigger maybe something that has happened to you directly or to a loved one, or it just bothers you. You can feel free and you can leave it's a lot easier on the computer or on Zoom to do that than I tell that people when we're in person. So I don't want to offend people. I do try to use appropriate humor as much as I can. If I don't laugh at myself, especially, or tell lousy jokes, then it just makes my day that much longer. So that to be said, I'll try to mix in a little bit of humor and just know that I don't take myself too serious very much. So I need to do this. Okay. What's grooming? Because we're going to go over some grooming techniques that we see just pretty much in general. But in my presentation, I try to mix up as much casework that I've done specifically. So because I feel better talking about that, saying I've experienced that. So grooming, what is grooming? It's a seduction. It is, and I'm going to talk about Anthony Curry for a second. Probably one of the more prolific traffickers I've had. Very smart. He's old school pimp. He was actually charged in 1984 and convicted of pimping in California. So if you're actually convicted of pimping, then I'm going to go on a limb and say you're a pimp. That's just my detective work there. So in my case with him, did a search warrant on his house. He actually had a book called The Art of Seduction. Now, I don't want to support, I think it's Mr. Robert Greene that wrote Art of Seduction. If you can find a PDF copy online, I would encourage you to give that a read, because it is how a trafficker does, what he does to his victims, and it's also what the people involved. And I usually say girls, but I really want to stress we have boy victims, we have trans. I just deal a lot more with the girl side of things. So if I say girls, know that I mean everybody. It's just a habit. I'm trying to fix it myself. So in the case with Mr. Curry, when he'd have the girls read The Art of Seduction, and he actually had points highlighted for them to read, but I don't think they realized what he highlighted for them to read and how to interact with Johns. They were being groomed by what was said. So online, The Art of Seduction gets to the heart of the character of the seducer and his or her tactics, triumphs, and failures. You keep reading, and it documents 24 maneuvers, will guide readers through the seduction process, providing cunning instructions for analysis of the fascinating and all-pervasive form of power. So, and there are a couple things that he highlighted, and I need to move now a little screen there. Might work. Get them to spend time in their environment. Get them to do things they never have done. They'll grow emotional, making it easier to lead them astray. Disguise all this in the form of pleasurable experience, and your targets will wake up one day distanced from everything that normally comforts them. Then, and this is very important, and if you could almost take a gameplay gamebook motto for a trafficker or pimp that's grooming, then they will turn to you for help like a child crying out for its mother when the lights are out. And this is the key. In seduction, as in warfare, the isolated target is weak and vulnerable. So we can look at victims in certain situations, and I'll explain a little bit in Anthony Curry's case. we have victims, and I think Jen talked about it, trafficking generally. I know there's certain cases out there. All the trafficking cases I see, they're not kids locked in cages. They're not hidden in closets. It is minors or young adults that are with the traffickers, where all intents and purposes, they could easily call for help. They could go home. They could remove themselves from that situation. And we say, people that don't really know about the cases, like, well, that doesn't make sense to me. Why didn't they just go ask for help? Why didn't they just leave? This is part of the grooming process. In seduction and as warfare, the isolated target is weak and vulnerable. So they're not in a position that they feel that it would just be worse if they went out and asked for help. And so they stick with their trafficker. Another section, talk about the seduction, learn to make everything you say and do in a kind of insinuation. Once we get to the middle part, insinuations. A passing comment suggests that something about the victim interests you, but keep it subtle. Your words revealing a possibility, creating a doubt. You're planting a seed that will take root in the weeks to come. When you are not there, again, when they could leave, when you're not there, your targets will fantasize about the ideas you have stirred up and brewed upon the doubts. They're slowly being led into the web, unaware that you are in control. How can they resist or become defensive if they kind of you see what is happening? So insinuating doubts with comments and being involved in that person's life, creating now with when we talk creating a normal, when we try to rescue them, that pimp is creating a normal and in the seduction process there. So again, this book, it was very valuable for trial because again, he had these highlighted and I could go and read to the jury just off what Anthony Curry highlighted that he wanted the girls to read, but all these things he was doing to his victim. So who is Mr. Curry? He is a career criminal. He had 39 cycles in his criminal history. 38 of them are sex crimes. And in 2014, so this was the 2014 case, he sexually exploited and abused a 15-year-old runaway, groomed her for a month. So he's a very smart, calculated pimp. He'd only have one girl, and that was part of it. He took a month to groom this victim before he even had her make money. Took her to different strip clubs where she danced. Again, she had a cell phone. She could have left, but she didn't. He told me when we went to trial in 2015, he kept saying, before the trial began, Detective Opitz said he kissed the Blarney Stone. Chad, he kept saying the Blarney Stone. I'm like, what are you talking about, the Blarney Stone? So I researched the Blarney Stone, and it's maybe not something that is, it's not the nail in the coffin, but it makes sense because I researched the Blarney Stone. According to the legend, whoever kisses the Blarney Stone is gifted with eloquence and persuasiveness. And what is being groomed? What is seduction? Having that persuasiveness. So he is the gift, pretty much has that gift of talking and being able to seduce that victim. And that's what the traffickers do. They have the gift of eloquence and persuasiveness. Because if they went in and were just mean right up front, generally, we would have a lot less of that, of the traditional trafficking cases that you see. So I researched kissing the Blarney Stone, and then I was teaching class in Lubbock, Texas, kind of like a trafficking 101. And I brought up this case, and somebody raised their hand in the back, and they're like, well, we have part of the Blarney Stone here on the Texas Tech campus. And I was like, no way. So I, right after class, took the map, and I found the Blarney Stone, and that is me kissing the Blarney Stone. So I was able to go back and tell Mr. Curry that I kissed the Blarney Stone. I think I had people looking in the windows. They were, I don't know what they do on the, it's right at a level that they probably put things on the Blarney Stone, but I was willing to sacrifice and make the kiss. And I think other people were like, I can't believe that guy's kissing the Blarney Stone, but I did it. And Mr. Curry was sentenced life for that case in 2015. and in Washington County. In Multnomah County, same victim. We put him in life for prison, so he's doing life sentences in 2 counties. Of course, the Oregon Court of Appeals reversed the Washington County conviction. So last week we had a trial. We had trial a month ago, and we had sentencing last week. He was found guilty again in Multnomah County, in Washington County, and was given 7 life sentences. I'm hoping, and it's awful that the victim each time had to come and go through it, the testimony. Now survivor, she's doing well. And he's just one of those people that it's a case that I wish everyone could have gone through just to see how he works and how an old school trafficker, maybe not applicable to what we see now, but how an old school trafficker thinks and works. So to understand kind of the grooming, because I know we wanted to go over grooming methods. We did a little bit with Mr. Curry, but you need to know who your pimps are. You need to know who your traffickers are. And so when I say who are they, each one is going to have their own grooming method. And if you can, you want to learn a lot about that person. I was just telling folks, a case popped up late last night. One of my victims, the trafficker, I hope to find him like pretty much right after I teach, but I know who he is. And I did kind of a dive into his stuff this morning. So I'm understanding just from what my victim told me, and now who he is, I'm starting to understand how his grooming methods. I mean, he was able to convince my victim. She told me last night, like her car broke down, and he's like, he went and picked out an Audi Q7 and told her, I want that car. Most people, you or I would, if somebody came and did that, we wouldn't bat an eye. We say no. She did it, and I'm going to sit down more with her, and again, not to make her feel bad. I'm going to understand from her why. Why did you tell me why you, and I won't say her name, felt that you needed to do that? And that's important. Again, you want to do it in a way with, having a victim advocate there. And I know she'd be more comfortable talking to me, just me, but getting to understand even through your victims, through your survivors about the pimp, because that's going to be a lot of what the grooming methods are. And I want to have a little interactive part here. So if you don't mind in the chats, or if you want to say something, what are things to consider or look at to assist in understanding who your traffickers are? Meaning, how are you going to, what's going to help you determine how that trafficker might groom somebody? What dynamics within that trafficker or that pimp's life is going to dictate how they're going to possibly groom a victim? Anybody have any thoughts? All right, you're just going to hear me talk, I guess. So,
Chad, it's Claudia. Sometimes it takes a minute for them to come through. So, yep,
that's
there
fine.
you go.
Oh, there you go. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah.
Let me go up to the top.
I can read it out. So one says financial representation.
Mhm.
Another says, Andrea says, ability to provide the survivor something they don't have.
Yes. Okay.
That's all we
Good.
have right now.
Thank you.
Yeah. Family history of the survivor as
Yes.
well.
And that's good. Everyone kind of touched on my next slide. So the offender background and personality. Yes, he will take the place of family. And so, researching that the offender's background, understanding their personality. We talked about a little bit the manner in which the offender recruits and maintains control over the victims. It will vary greatly. And we'll talk a little bit more. This was a text that one of my traffickers, back in 2010. So, man, I'm getting old. That's 13 years ago. But if you read that, it would be, again, he's putting her down. This was part of a groom And you would look at it, hey, if somebody sent me a text message, I'd be like, well, I'm done with you. But again, he's saying, hey, your attitude has got to go. A crazier pimp would have slapped the shit out of you. And then now he's going into putting her down, establishing that rule. Hey, your attitude's got to go. I feel like your focus, I have to feel like your focus, your drive is for me. And how this, he capitalized that, not me. And the team, and again, the team. And remember, and if anybody wants to use this next line for like a Hallmark card or a birthday card or whatever, you can feel free to do that. Valentine's Day would work well. It is your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude. Kind of a corny thing, but he is the gift of gab, the gift of words. And so he's saying that your attitude towards him, and he's calling it the team, because remember, they're together, is going to determine how high you go, what your success is. If you don't, you're going to be a failure. And there's going to be consequences if you don't. Keith McMurray spent time in prison. Now he's back out. Ways to learn about your trafficker. So this is going to, again, determining who your trafficker is. You're going to look at your grooming methods off that. But social media, what social media these days will tell you a lot about just the lifestyle, possible gangs, just possible violence level, but just how overt are these people being on social media? And it's almost a show of flair. And again, that they are more than what I think they are, but their status is they're sky high. And if you want to join me, that's it. And that's what a lot of social media is. It's presenting yourself in a certain light that you are successful, you are the best whenever, you make the best music, you have the best clothes. And if you want to join team whomever, come do it. So, I mean, Mr. Campbell, he was actually down in Texas. He was out in Portland for a while, had a case with him. And if you read that, almost like that one that Mr. McMurray typed up. But again, this is, if you're, let's say a young 15, 16-year-old, or even a young, let's say 21-year-old, he is making prostitution, what he's calling Morris prostitution, hoeing. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that it's actually good. And it's actually a positive thing in your life. It's believing that sacrifice makes success. It's also about wanting to learn the best in the game instead of learning to be a survivor and using it as a temporary stepping stone. This is a lifestyle induced with a game that can last a lifetime. There's no cap on where you can take you or anything possible. Don't come to this life as a last resort when the game deserves to be your first. Hashtag pimp thought. So he's more putting out there that he's a pimp. He knows he's a pimp. He knows he's a trafficker. And again, he is making it a glorifying, what he calls hoeing, glorifying the trafficking life and lifestyle to have it be something that you can take and you could, pretty much till the day you die, it's going to be a positive thing that you did. This is just a great example of, again, not your Taken movie or anything like that. It is people, these guys, generally guys, putting themselves out there in messages like this. And it's all they have to do is set a hook. And we'll talk about who the typical victims are in trafficking cases or who they look for. But this, all they have to do is set a hook. And if any of this is catchy or any of this is, that somebody's like, oh, that actually sounds good, then that he's accomplished what he had wanted to do. And he actually had quite a few girls working for him. Just simple photos. And it is not even a law enforcement thing. If social media is open, and this is one of the traffickers I was looking into. This picture tells not 1,000 words. They say a picture is 1,000 words. It says a lot. So if I'm looking at this, or if you are, and you come across somebody that says, hey, I'm in a situation with this one guy, and she's not really saying that she's being trafficked, or he's not saying he's being trafficked, or whatever. But if they show you a photo, and so that's him, well, he's has money in his pocket. He has a firearm in his waistband. He's around other people. He's maybe wearing some certain colors. Just on the law enforcement side, I would handle this with care, but that's a flashy thing. That is somebody that is projecting confidence and lifestyle. And if you want to come join it, join it. I'm going to talk about Ace Boogersman. Now, he had one of the worst nicknames ever. I don't know why he called himself Boogersman, but he came across one of our patrol officers, came across his car in the middle of the road. He had a handgun in the car, and he was like literally for 10 minutes sitting at 3 a.m. in a residential intersection, just sitting there. So I talked to him because his phone's blowing up, and on his social media, he's got some interesting things that I'll show you. But and then his text, there was this text message, and one of his texts that on his phone. He even says, "I'm a pimp, not anybody's." I'm not going to say the word, but meaning my line will always come first. Ivy, that's one of the names of his girls. My pimpin' will always come first. So if a bitch can't stay in her lane, then she's got to go. I don't care who she is or how long she's been around. So if she's really off that, then she's effed herself. All you need to do is stay in your lane and worry about you are doing for me. Like I said, you choose with me, not her. Our relationship is what needs to come first. And I don't care what it is, no other bitch. So it's plain as day who he is. And he is, and this is on his social media. So he had 3 girls, and I was able to identify all 3. And he's using them all together. So that's also another grooming tactic where, hey, look at the 3 of them are happy. We want a 4th. Come join us, because he can show this to his girls or to whoever who's trying to recruit and say, you know what, that's a lifestyle you can be a part of if you want. Again, they're all happy. This is they asked me if I'd ever settled down. No, I'm settling up 3 times. And that's what he means by having 3 gals. Simple things like that on his social media. He's the king surrounded by queens. Again, do you want to be a queen? Another one had pay me in a video. He made that for two girls. There are 2 girls in the video, but that's what he wanted. But again, you're seeing $100 bills, and you're thinking, okay, that's money. Again, if you want to be part of that, it's all lifestyle. Come be a part of it. Another way to do it, tattoos. And I know Jen touched some on some branding last week, but tattoos on the traffickers.
Hey, Chad.
Yo.
This is Claudia. Just kind of, if you don't mind, if I could just ask a question. When you were showing those pictures before, it kind of strikes me almost that those just look like normal photos, sitting at, it was like Buffalo Wild Wings. You know what I mean? Like just,
Yes.
I mean, in conglomeration or with the pattern, sure, but do you see a lot of times the patterns building where it'll be more and more and more in different photos, or sometimes you have traffickers that just have like a lot of these like fun Buffalo Wild Wings photos?
Well, I would say it's if you look at fun, I mean, because plenty of people have photos
You know
like
what I
this.
mean? Yeah, you know what I mean. But
I would say the buildup of, because then we have that, and
right.
and then you have other
And then you have
things
that. Okay.
and there'll be another one I'll show you that he had. So it is the kind of the total picture of what you're seeing. And because if you're, especially if you've been doing this long enough, some people look at it and say that's I don't know, that's kind of a goofy little image that he had. But to me, that's like that is knowing, because I know Ace. I know who he is, and I know why he did that. And there'll be a couple other things. So I wouldn't say just necessarily just that one picture, but the combination of everything. If you look at it the totality of all the stuff that you have, if you're able to do that, then that would be a very strong indicator of the grooming that has taken place and what he's doing with those current 3 gals. So
Yeah, and I think I was just thinking of it as from, when I ran a domestic violence shelter, and a lot of the folks we have on the call here, they're, we all come from different parts of victim service. So we may only see a snapshot, right? But the
right,
survivor may never come into your world, so to speak. So
right.
just it's good just to remember that looking at the totality. And I just think, gosh, if survivor showed me a picture and showed me
Mm-hmm.
another picture, like just trying to get to know them, I don't know that I would ever think that that's a trafficking scenario,
Right.
Do you see what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
I do. And that's
Okay.
kind of at the end, at the end of the presentation, we talk about the task force and the multidisciplinary teams, the different components of people come together. So if we're in a meeting and where let's say I have Ace, and I tell our task force, hey, I have this case on Ace, and and I share what I have. And you might have the domestic violence component, you might have the victim advocacy people on stuff they're able to tell, or whomever, like, oh, okay, I also have this and I have this. So it's where you may not see it and some other people may not see it, but again, kind of what we're all said and done, where all sides come together and we put that package together of the different snapshots, because I won't be able to find all the social media. I can barely find social media as it is. But you might have people with all this different information where singularly or just a couple things may not, well, be like, who cares? But that puzzle, it's all one big puzzle. And these are just the puzzle pieces of putting it together, and having kind of people be aware of, what kind of bigger picture of what you're looking at. It could be there and it may not. It may just be, like you said, a harmless, they're just out at Buffalo Wild Wings watching the NCAA tournament. And that is what it is. So did I
Okay.
address that?
Yeah, thanks. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, thanks.
So tattoos on them. The MOB, money, I don't like to say the word, but I'll say it, kind of one, money over bitches. I've had white guys with MOB tattoos, Hispanic. I've had a crazy Iranian guy one time. So my rule is, if it's definitely not a racial thing at all, trafficking never is. And if you have, my joke is, if you have an uncle with an MOB tattoo, that you're at Thanksgiving and you see it on his leg or his arm, let me know, because he's probably into bad things. So just pay attention to tattoos. Tattoos, I always like it to be in person, because I ask people, okay, if you don't mind me asking who has tattoos, people raise their hand or not. I don't ask where or what they are. But tattoos tell a story, right? Either positive or negative. If you have a tattoo, there's a story behind it. Either you really enjoy it, or you regret getting it, or maybe you don't really remember getting it because there's a story behind that. But tattoos tell a story. So, and that's what traffickers that have tattoos, they all mean something to them, just like your tattoo means something to you. So ask, whatever situation there is, and even with victims or survivors, ask about those. But especially those in a position, law enforcement, ask about the tattoos, because this is Ace Boogerman's tattoo. He told me he wasn't a pimp, but he says, I asked him about that tattoo, and he said, Chad, this is the most unique tattoo. This is the one he made up. And I said, well, what does it mean? He said, that's my MOB tattoo. And I said, oh, he goes, it's the money bag over the female restroom sign. I'm like, well, that's super neat to have the female restroom sign or symbol on your tattooed on you. But he's very, very proud of that tattoo. Remember, but he's not a pimp. Milwaukee Brewers. If you're a Milwaukee Brewer fan, I know we're kind of getting where you folks are at. You're kind of close to the Milwaukee Brewers. Maybe I know you're probably, or at least Wisconsin. I don't think Milwaukee kind of put much thought into it when they did the MOB, because if you see, no, you can't see my cursor. Normally I have like my red pointer, but you see the M, the O, and then the B. So you have, if you see somebody walking down, well, in Portland, if I see anybody rocking one of these, I'm puzzled. But I had a trafficker one time. I was like, Johnny, what tattoos do you have? And he showed me all his tattoos, and then he wouldn't show me his chest. And I was like, well, what do you have on your chest? And he lifted up his shirt, and he had his MOB. And I said, why do you have that? And he goes, I'm a Brewers fan. I said, okay, name me one of the Milwaukee Brewer players. He goes, I don't know any. Name me a past Milwaukee Brewers player, Robin Yount or anybody. And he said, I don't know anybody. So that's when I declared him like, well, you don't know anybody because you're a pimp and a trafficker. So just pay attention to the small things, and ask questions about them, and pay attention to tattoos on the victims. Whether it's a brand, if we're going to call it a brand, or we're going to call it something to remember their pimp by, which is technically a brand, but pay attention to those and ask questions about that. There's probably not a lot of victims that aren't being trafficked or have been in trafficking situations, or survivors that have daddy's princess on them. So that's key. What does a crown mean? Crown means royalty, or I'm sorry, loyalty to the crown. This was my first branding case. That was, his nickname is YB. It's a 15-year-old that I helped rescue and get out of the, try to get her out of life, but he was nice enough to pose for that. We do have, through our victim advocacy group, we do have a tattoo removal program. So that is something very key that for your task force and for your MDTs, and I'm saying multidisciplinary team. Some people use the task force or an MDT term for a task force. So have that talk as well, because that is something you want to offer. The gal that I'm dealing with from last night, the trafficker came back into her life. We've done 2 tattoo removal things for her for previous traffickers. So I'm kind of shuddering to think what new ink she has, but I'll offer to have that removed as well, because she deserves that. Remember Ace? This is, again, another photo on his Facebook. So Claudia, when you were mentioning, like, you see photos and you see like the 3 girls, and then you see the playing card thing, and then you see, now I know which girl this is, and she has Boog tattooed on the back of her neck with a crown. That's like, he pretty much chronicled, he did a great job of chronicling and documenting his own trafficking grooming techniques, and the results of his grooming all on Facebook for me. So that was nice of him to do that. So it's a totality of it where it was just progressing. And again, you would think, what girl would want Boog, the term Boog, tattooed on her anywhere on her body with a crown? Yeah, it is a grooming that is more or less now, hey, you're mine, and you're a piece of my more piece of property, because it's, again, that's a whole MOB mentality. It's the money over the girl. And then Tone, this is another case I had, and the poor gal, you can tell it's not a professional tattoo. That's just, we see a lot of that. They're just inked by somebody, and she was super young, and I felt bad for her. You ask questions about them. This was a gal that's been in the life for a while, but she allowed me to take a photo of her tattoo. But her pimp made her get the Rose. City of Portland is the city of roses, and that's where she normally worked. And then those are bands of money there. So it was this, she regretted, she's not proud of it, but it's a part of her. It's a part of her story, and ask about, again, it doesn't matter what position you're in. law enforcement or not, any of these people on this call, if you encounter them, because whether they're telling you the truth or not, just take the time to ask them about them. And if they're okay with it, you don't have to show their face. I even told her, hey, I provide training around to other law enforcement. Can I take a photo of your hand? She's like, absolutely. Just don't show my face. And I said, okay. So I let her look at it. I told her I got her pretty pink nails in there, so she was good. Another gal, again, I feel super bad for her because she's got the inks, she's inked up on the face. Again, I'm not saying it's bad for people that want tattoos on their face. They're just, one of them is not, it's not, probably she regrets having at least one of them, but I know that, it doesn't take much to kind of know the lifestyle that they have been groomed or pushed into, if you're having a money bag tattooed at the base of your neck. Digital
Hey,
data.
hey, Chad, do you mind
Yo,
if we just pause for a second to see if there are any questions? Because it
yes.
was, okay, all right. So I want to double check. Does anybody have any questions?
And if I'm going too fast, let me know. If I'm not going fast enough, let me know. If people will just want me to be done, just say, Chad, I want you to be done, and then just let me know.
Let me check the chat. Or does anybody have any questions want to come off?
And the folks know I was going to go till about 8, and then we'll take a break.
So that's 9,
Oh, I'm sorry.
right?
Yeah, 8 o'clock.
10,
In
10.
about 10 minutes, we'll take a break.
Okay. I don't see any questions. Just wanted to make sure that we pause because that's all good information. Just okay, go ahead.
Other ways to look at grooming methods is through the digital data that you may encounter, whether you have a victim's phone or you have a trafficker's phone. I know a lot of this may be toward on the law enforcement side, but it's just good reminders about, we talk about photos and we talk about how these photos that you see or the text messages that you see, but things on devices are stored and kept. So that is going to be indicators of how they're going to groom people. So this is a case from Devontae Donahue. And I met Devontae when he dropped off, him and the gal on the right dropped off the gal on the left for an undercover date. And it's a funny story because I can laugh about it now with this gal. She's out of life, but this was the second time I've encountered this gal. One time in Beaverton in Portland, near the Portland airport on an undercover date. And she was not nice to me then. And I'm not offended by it, but I think anyone working trafficking, whatever profession you're in, sometimes these victims, they don't like you. And so she was mean. And then I had no idea it was her. She was 16 back then. So I make a date and car drops off and like we look at each other and she's still a minor and her I can just hear her voice now. She's like, oh, it's you. And I'm like, oh, it's you. This is neat. And so long story short, Devontae gets in a crash. And the gal, both him and the gal get found. The gal on the right was his wife. So you have a wife, and just that picture right there, that picture where she's looking down. And if I were to take that white circle off the victim, she's looking at the camera, very sure of herself. And so you have not only this victim that's been groomed and recruited into this, who was, if you talk to her, she'd be like, I'm fine making money. I want to make as much money as I can for Devontae. This is what I want to be doing. And now you have the wife who is, how bad is it for her where you have a husband that should be devoted to you. And now you have, the wife is involved in trafficking and the victim. So he's bringing in somebody else into their family to do that. So that is a manipulation to almost the very extreme where you can convince your own wife to, hey, let's bring somebody else in. And of course, he was having an intimate relationship with the victim as well. So that photo, and then you have just, again, photos that he would be able to, that he shows people, say, hey, if you want to be a part of my life, if you want to be part of our team, my wife and I, and you want this, you want money, you want the ability to have money laying around right in front of you and posing with it, then come join our team. And he was very willing to show people his rewards of what his wife did and what the victim did as far as dates. This is him. I liked it in person. This is him. He was a convicted felon. So he's holding the gun. He told me it wasn't a real gun. And I was like, well, Devontae, I can see the bullets. And so one of the photos was, he said, well, this is at a hotel and the victim didn't stay with us. And I like doing this one in person because I always ask people, so what do you see in here that's a key indicator that it's not just him and the person? And I know people would be smart to look at it, but I'll give you about 5 more seconds and I'll leave it up to you if somebody wants to just throw in the chat of what they see of what's like one of the main key clue.
So everybody's saying there's a dope kit, 3 toothbrushes, 2 to 3 toothbrushes,
yes.
Makeup.
Yep, three toothbrushes is it. So
yep.
Unless he has a brush for the uppers and the lowers, that there are 3 people staying in that room. And I was able to get video or still images of them checking in. So it's small things like that we could say, well, because he was smart enough to distance himself when in talking to him. Hey, it wasn't a real gun. Victim never stayed with us. I was able to easily refute that. So the small thing, again, the digital data on phones is very telling, but also know that is used. What you're going to find, and what we see all the time, is that those images, those photos are used to recruit, groom, and get as many victims as possible to want to be part of team whomever. Why don't we take a break now? Why don't we come back in like 8 minutes? I'll come back and go get some coffee, or we'll go 10 minutes. How about that? We'll be back in like 2 minutes after the hour. And are you good with that, Claudia?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. We'll be back, folks. Thanks. What age do you suggest making children are? It's a good question. I will address that. When we go back here, I'll get 1 more minute.
Okay, great.
I need to power up myself and get Premier Protein. It's for the old man drink. Keep this.
Not coffee. That's what I'm on, like my 6th cup today. So
I got Dr. Pepper, water, and Premier Protein. It's like a well balanced oiled machine I got going on here.
Oh, Kathy's on. So great. Hi,
Okay.
Kathy. Thanks for jumping on video. So I'll let you take it away. Oh, you're on mute though. All right, everybody, welcome back. I think we are started recording, so we'll go ahead and start. Go ahead, Kathy. There.
I can't hear Kathy.
Try again, Kathy.
Kathy, you just want me to read your question? I see your question. I can see you. You're muted, and then you took it off, and then.
No.
I don't know why. Anyway,
okay.
So Kathy asked, what age do you suggest making children aware of human trafficking using training videos, social media training, and group discussions? That's a great question. And this is Chad's opinion. So take it for what it's worth. Um, I used to give talks more on morals of child exploitation, meaning um, covering the whole gamut of trafficking concerns, grooming, and then or the ones that are they want, hey, send me a video or pic and I'll give you money or just whatever. Just the awareness of that in mid and high school. And then we got kind of banned from the schools. So at least in Oregon, I think it should be, my opinion is by ninth grade, there should be a part of like a home ec type thing or whatever. I don't know what class you, but where it's part of the every quarter or every semester, how it makes up that you have somebody or a couple people from different, like it's allied professional group, like 3 people go in and give a talk and give presentations or whatever. Because I think you can't, because I know it can be kind of a racy subject or not graphic, but shoot, it can be much more controversial than, and I'm not going to go on political stuff, but of things that we're being told is people have access to anyway. And if kids have cell phones, they're going to have access to it anyway. So my thoughts are you address it on the front end, so we don't play catch up on the back end of things where somebody didn't know. And I don't see those, because you're also going to have a lot of peers that are going to be around friends that they're going to key on something. They might remember, oh, I remember Chad talked about that in my home ec class or whatever. And they might tell law enforcement where, hey, my friend has, I'm concerned. So I think early on, I think that should be done. And I would encourage people to do that. But I've kind of run into a roadblock up here in our area on that.
So I wonder if we could kind of pose that to City of Rockford and surrounding areas. I mean, is this discussed in family life education? That's what they call it in Virginia, or sex ed, or because that is, Chad, I think we see that throughout the country that this is a challenging topic, but those of us in the victim service field seeing happening. Christina said they've had experience with children as young as 11 involved in sex trafficking, right? And those maybe those underrepresented populations that don't have 2 parents watching, or somebody who works all day, so kids have a lot of access to the internet,
Mhm.
right? There's no
Right.
monitoring. There's, you have a phone for safety now. Obviously, we're
Mhm.
seeing what's going on in school, so a lot of kids have access to, bring your own technology and so on and so forth. So it's kind of it's a really tough discussion to
Yeah.
have, especially in like foster care systems, child welfare, where those kids are already kind of at risk. They're already going through other traumas.
And if I tell people, if I can pose, and it's not necessarily trafficking related, it's child exploitation. If I can pose as an 11 or 12-year-old um, and boy, girl, trans, or whatever the makeup is, if I can pose as that and pass off as that, and you have an interest where you have people, you have your predators wanting to meet to have some type of sex or and be involved in, hey, money in exchange for some type of sexual service, then like she said, 11 years old, if there is a market for that, unfortunately, then it should be taught because it's happening. May not as prevalent as what it would be a 16-year-old, but it's happening. And so I'm in that mindset where you don't shy away, and you don't pretend like it doesn't exist until it does happen. And then you're just, then it's, well, why weren't we doing something? Or why wasn't something said? Or why wasn't things weren't taught? Or I don't know, but maybe that's why I'm not a teacher.
Yeah, and then on the other end, and this could be a whole nother dissertation, is, what kind of things are being done for the buyers, right? For
Right.
those the because there's obviously a want.
Mhm.
So, going after doing more on the buyers and identification of buyers, and I know
Yeah,
that's been a discussion within the anti-trafficking field. Um, certainly in other fields where there's intimate partner violence, sexual violence, we're always focusing on, yeah, My Life, My Choice program is great, out of Boston. So if you're familiar with that, but always focusing on the victim response versus, the other side, which you all deal with, right? The buyers, the perpetrators. Um, yeah, I
yeah.
don't know that there's an easier. And then Megan said Raise offers a youth prevention program for 12 to 18. So Megan, if you have other if you could drop, or I can try and look it up if you want to drop it in the chat, and then I can look up My Life, My Choice for folks. Kathy, did that answer your question? Kind of. Oh, we kind of heard you. Oh, now we can't. Okay, we'll have Bess work on it. Kathy, don't give up. Um,
Keep going, Kathy. Keep going.
we're getting a lot of stuff in the chat, so let me find it. There was My Life, My Choice. Okay. RSAC provides Aaron's Law presentations to the Winnebago, Boone, and Ogle County area schools. I know in those talks they talk about safe touch at an appropriate age, right? So they also talk about there are also talks about tricky adults as well. I am unsure if they talk specifically about trafficking. That's something to ask Jimmy from RSAC. And then Aaron's Law and Teen Violence presentations may cover some of that. School social workers may discuss these issues in group, focusing on awareness on social media. So there is some leverage to be able to discuss this within the schools. Joanna has a question. She goes, maybe I missed this, but what is the average age for recruitment for the victim?
Uh,
Um,
to touch on the average age, I don't have an average age. I would just say there's an age range where I typically at least begin. This is cases that I see out of the Portland metro area around here. I would say it's in the range of, if you're talking about minor aged victims, probably 15 to right up to 18. But I know in the houseless youth arena, that's probably younger because they're, if they don't have a home or they're on their own, and if they're more or less having to get by on doing stuff, more on the streets, that I know that that's going to be even younger on that because they have to kind of do what they need to do to survive.
right. And you may go into this. I think we've talked about it offline, right? That a lot of kids who identify as LGBTQ plus, runaway homeless youth, their risk even goes up.
Right.
So if they're kicked out of home or unhomed or don't have a place to go, that age may go down
Yes,
for.
and I would say it definitely does go down. Being it's a little difficult on our end. We do have centers for youth here in Beaverton, but the majority of that is going to be in Portland, and we just kind of touched on it before we got started. It's a lot of it's all political stuff, but I don't get to venture much into Portland. It's a different county now than what I used to. So some of those that experience and kind of contact that I have with those people, it's as far as the allied professionals there, it's been lacking a little bit, but hey, that's something I'm trying to deal with on our end. But yes, it definitely does go down with youth that are displaced by family or other reasons, or DHS or CPS youth. So, all right, do we keep going?
I think so. Kathy, or do you want to try one
Okay,
more time?
can you guys hear me now?
Yes, it
Yay.
worked.
It messaged me and said they made me a co-host to be able, and it worked. So yeah. Yeah, you answered my question about the age. I think the reason I asked that question mostly is because I'm on a task force for our Rotary Club. And we speak, at other clubs in our district, and it's about awareness is what we're trying to spread. However, having, 7 nieces and a granddaughter that are preteen and starting to get cell phones, I'm really concerned about that.
No, yeah.
As we know, the social media aspect side of it. I mean, my granddaughter just got her first cell phone. She's 12. She has no internet on her cell phone, but my nieces do. So it's just the sooner, I thought maybe the age when they start using cell phones. So they're aware that there are people out there that are targeting them or trying to groom them.
Yes, no, and I agree. And I never tell parents how to parent, but I do tell them that if you have even rules for cell phones where if you take, hey, there's no internet. I have personal friends that had a rule, and even when their daughter was in high school, where they said, here's a phone, but you can't have internet access. Well, she used the Bible app to then go into the Bible app, which is an app, which they thought, great. She wants to read the Bible. She would use that to then talk to guys using the Bible app because you can have direct interaction with that. So all that to be said is that, and I've had countless teens that get phones from friends because, if I have one, I carry 2 cell phones, one work, one personal, but I have other cell phones in my desk, my older phones that you can use as, even though they're no service, you can use it as a Wi-Fi. So I've had plenty of friends that have given phones to their friends who their parents have very strict rules on internet or cell phones, and they're just using it on a phone. So I tell parents, like, I'd much rather with my kids, it was always up front. Hey, I'm going to have access to your phone. I'm going to have to trust you. Here's the issues that I'm concerned about because, and they're, they understand that because of my work, but it's also, and I didn't come at them with, all the ugliness out there, but the possibility. So people aren't surprised because yes, whatever your component, Kathy, or what you're talking about, or other people that are around here that have kids or work with around kids, they're going to be confronted or at least receive some type of communication from a creepy dude. It's a given. It's going to be a given. And it's what you do with that. So you're not surprised. And that's why I tell the parents to tell their kids, like, hey, if you have it be where it's an open line of communication, so they do feel comfortable instead of them getting angry, like, oh, you're on this website or this on this app. I'm sorry. If it's known, and so that child can hopefully feel comfortable and say whomever, to a parent, to a guardian, to somebody, a teacher, hey, I was contacted by a creepy dude and I'm just letting you know. And so giving this children, go back to your question up front, Kathy, getting that child or that student at least in the loop of this is the possibility. And you don't have to go into trafficking stuff. You can just do grooming or just creepy stuff. Hey, here's what to do. Here's different options you could do. I think planting that seed is the main thing. I think if you at an early age, if you come at them overwhelming with trafficking stuff, they're just gonna it's gonna be pretty overwhelming. So, but I think more of talks about child exploitation, that is, or young, we can, you don't have to say child exploitation, student exploitation. That way you're not making it being such a, like, because some kids in high school don't want to be, their children don't like to be referred to as child stuff. So student exploitation.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Let's see. I don't think so. Nope, I don't think so right now. But thanks, Kathy. Appreciate that. And keep up the questions and I will capture them. All right.
Okay. So recruitment tactics, force, fraud, or coercion. That's almost, and I don't know what the statutes are in Illinois there, but there's our trafficking or our, we call it compelling or promoting prostitution. it's either through force, fraud, or coercion. If they're of age, if they're underage, it doesn't matter because they're underage. But you're always going to have that component within your grooming tactics of force, fraud, or coercion. So, and they can be more than one. They can be all three. They can be one or two. So here's some examples that regarding the force, fraud, and coercion. So romance, being coerced, and I see it a lot with, maybe a trafficker or a guy in his upper 20s, and it's your upper teen, 15, 16-year-old victim, and it's that thought of, wow, I have an older person interested in me, and that is really appealing, and I like that. And of course, if that's how they feel, then that person has already set that hook, and that's, they kind of accomplished what they needed there. Modeling, getting them the model, that's all three. Music recording. Countless people think these traffickers think they can make music, and their music's terrible. That's just my opinion. That's Chad's opinion. So the movies through force, fraud, or coercion, and you can, a lot of that's coercion there. If you get them to make a movie or some type of photos where they're intimate, where they think it's just the victim thinks it's just them two, but now that trafficker has that as, hey, well, I have this, I'm going to put it on blast if you don't do this, and if you don't start doing dates for me. Have had cases like that before. The sex in, the friend, peer coercion, is job opportunity, has lots of nice things. We already talked about that, the peer pressure. We see a lot now of the phishing. It happens online because a lot of escort ads or prostitution ads that we see are people that are only doing things online. And it kind of started to transition around on the COVID, when COVID really started to hit, because you had maybe some less people doing dates, or guys weren't able to go and meet. Because places were kind of locked down. So I kind of see more of it, at least out here, more of a transition, but that's becoming very prevalent in recruitment methods, but direct messages online and social media platforms. So that's a lot of the recruitment methods there that we're seeing. Anybody have any questions on any of that?
No, I just put in there that my stepdaughter had a friend who this was so gross. Like I had the ick factor going on. She's like, yeah, I was talking to this guy. He lives out in the country, but he's really lonely, but he sends me like $500. And I was like, whoa, 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 what? And it was just, she was 16, 17, and it was just so nonchalant. And I said, well, how much has he sent? And, it was several batches of money, and then it came out she was sending pictures, and I'm like, what kind of, so like it just kind of keeps going up. And that was around COVID, right?
Okay,
So
yeah.
when there was a lot of isolation, that beginning stage of COVID, and really he was the lonely guy. She's like, he's
Right,
harmless.
right. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about kind of to me, one of the more prevalent sites that's almost exactly like that with what you just described, Claudia. So the manufactured bonds that the trafficker has with the victims during recruitment, and we already talked about it, how they will, kind of like the Anthony Curry method, where he groomed the victim for a month before he kind of enacted his evilness on her. So the abuser meets future victim, showers, attention, compliments, quality time, create a frenetic communication norm. And then, those boundaries are now going to be pushed, and it's almost overwhelming. It's almost, well, maybe a bad example, but when we're kind of dealing with something on the law enforcement side, if we want to kind of get people not thinking straight, we overwhelm them. We'll push a lot of attention and just a force as far as just to overwhelm that person so they can't think. And it's just mentally, it's kind of like what the trafficker is doing. And now he's creating, if it's fast paced and they're overwhelming that victim in their thoughts, and that it's just a whirlwind of things, and that's what they want to do, to create and manufacture that bond with that victim. And then the setup, once the bond is secure, a compromising situation will arise, and that's creating either hey, we're in a tough spot, or I know this about you, or it's something where now he's going to take advantage of that relationship, and the abuser will then, seek to disrupt and get something from that victim. So it's all, the manufactured bond is it's so critical to how that whole again, Anthony Curry thing, where it is something that you or I would think just leave, but it's more complex than that. It's a bond that is so powerful enough for that victim to stay put and do ultimately, sex for money, where they don't even get to keep the money. It is just an evil thing that these people do. And it irritates me. I'm just thinking of this victim from last night. I know I can just anticipate what he did, as far as, especially when she's with a 10-month-old baby, and it's just not, it makes me irate. But I'll keep going, and I'll solve that problem when we're done. So who are the victims that are targeted and or groomed? So this is time to, if you want to kind of throw in the chat of who do you think the most victims are that are groomed, or targeted by traffickers? Wouldn't mind just taking a minute to, or if you want to talk, or you want to write on a piece of paper and shove it to the monitor in case, like Kathy can't, the audio doesn't work, but. Or they do what they do in the tennis things, where they'll actually sign the camera, but right on your camera in reverse. And so I can see what it says in black Sharpie.
So we have a bunch coming in.
Yeah, I'm reading those.
Yeah, kids in foster care, broken families, runaway youth, at-risk vulnerable, homeless youth, at-risk youth, vulnerable. Yep, survivors of other forms of trauma.
Yes.
Yep.
All good. And I wanted people to, I was kind of anticipating all those, and all those are, I don't think, those are great answers. I just want to stress to people, because you all know we'll say the typical, you all know what to look for. There's nothing that I could tell you to say, you know what, if I were you, I would focus on these people. This is a thing that most people can probably, that aren't even associated with this career or path that or work that you do. I might sneeze here, so bear with me. But I mainly want to say is, don't miss the ones that aren't your typical victims, because I've had numerous ones that on the appearance have already a foundation that you would think, like the one gal that on Devontae Donahue, the one that I'd had 2 dates with, undercover dates with, it was given the finger to the camera. She had parents that were both together. They owned business. She was provided everything possession-wise. She had a car, she had a phone, great place to live. And I say that is that a lot of the times we don't know what's on the inside of people, what they're lacking, what they're hurting on the inside. So you might have it where it's easy to say, okay, well, that one I can see, I can make a guess on why that victim is involved with this, or is choosing to be around that guy, how they were groomed, because they are houseless. They are through the DHS or CPS system. They are, their family is all broke apart. They're missing a parental component or whatever. So don't have that. Just know it can be somebody that all intents and purposes has everything that they need. But that trafficking is unique because they know the right buttons to push with that victim. They know how to, again, setting the hook is all they need to do. And I've had one person tell me, and it's probably been told, but one trafficker say that if they're at the mall, they see multiple girls, they won't pick the one that they deem to be the most unpretty. They won't pick the prettiest one. They will pick the one that they deem looks normal in their eyes, because they're going to think, because they think the one that looks unpretty is like, okay, there's something up why this guy picking me. The prettiest one is going to be like, well, of course they picked me, and doesn't want to deal with the drama there. So they're going to pick the one that has what they think is the most, doesn't have any of the what we call issues or things that maybe pop up in their life, because that is the person they think they're going to be able to attract and get to work for them. So just keep your eyes open on that, and know that can be a part. Any minor can be the victim with a perfect combination of persuasion and seduction that means something to them. And again, we don't know on that last part that means something to them. We can predict, but we don't know. With something that means something to me, maybe is different for Claudia, or different for Kathy, or different for Emily. And a lot of the times you don't know until you have that interaction and you start to build that relationship and cultivate that relationship with that victim. And we'll talk about that at the end. If that makes sense to everybody. All right. So emerging trends, we're going to talk about that. What emerging trends, this is interaction time now, do you see in the Rockford area, as far as from your experience, how are some of your victims being recruited or enticed into the life, or being exploited? Somebody have any thoughts? Facebook groups, TikTok. Okay. Anybody else?
About other family members. I mean, I don't know in Rockford, so I think I want to defer. Oh, yeah.
Omegle, yep.
Mm.
Oh, signs for summer work on streets. That's interesting. Kids needed friends, yeah.
Friends, substance use. Jason, I don't know if you can come off mute, but like what kind of, can you tell us more about the summer work? Is it in particular? Oh, babysitting. Okay.
Okay.
Somebody said yes, other family members. Okay, Kathy, sorry.
Oh, it let me unmute. So, I'm in the Quad City area, which is about an hour and a half from Rockford. But for us, it's a lot of runaways. If there's runaways, I'm on the Mississippi River, so Iowa's right across the river. And there's a lot of farm towns, little small farm towns right off the interstate. And missing runaways is the number one thing right now.
Okay. Do you folks have, on the law enforcement side especially, do you folks have detectives assigned to runaways, or do you have a runaway group or school resource officers that have a pretty good pulse on the runaways?
So the larger cities like Davenport and Rock Island are just starting that. The problem is this is happening in these small little towns that some of them don't even have a police force.
Okay.
So yeah, I know the state of Iowa is working on building their own task force in that area just because of that, because it seems to be a lot of children missing from areas where there's not a huge police presence.
Right. Yeah, and that would be hard. I mean, I think I have to realize I'm kind of blessed. I'm the only one in our agency that we have 12 detectives, well, 10 now. But I'm the only one that works kind of the child exploitation stuff. So a lot of stuff falls on me, plus all the other stuff that comes around. I'm not going to go off on a big drama thing, but it's just, I'd like to devote more time to it. And I have to sit back and think, like Kathy, what you're talking about is if you have more rural stuff where, and you're going to be lucky to have even a deputy or a sheriff assigned to that area. So it makes it interesting. Do you have LGBTQ, particularly trans youth, running to Rockford from?
That was me, Chad, asking.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, if anybody can see Jen's question there for the Rockford people.
Sorry, somebody's delivering something, so the dogs are barking. The other thing that's coming here is juvenile crime is climbing in Rockford. So, Joanna, I don't know if you want to elaborate, and then Jennifer. Okay.
Hi, it's Jen Cachapalia from Rockford. I wasn't sure if Joanna was going to hop on or not. I'm going to defer on what we're seeing very specifically to our law enforcement partners from Winnebago County and Rockford that are on the call, and not trying to put them on the spot, but I think they just have a better purview of that than we do. I would say that we do not have an organized effort around intentionally the same people assigned to the runaway investigations. That's something that we've been talking about here for a while. Jared Johansson from the Winnebago County Juvenile Probation Department, that's something that's been on his radar now for a couple of years. And so I know there is some conversation and some sharing of information around runaways to try to connect the dots, but there's nothing that's been formal that's put in place that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you, Jen, for sharing that. And Emilio.
Yeah, there you go.
Emilio is assigned to handle the runaway investigations for Rockford. So it's not like he's newly assigned to it. And it can be a tall task, especially on the chronic runaway folks, or especially we just on our end, we see a large number of, and we call it DHS, but it's more or less your CPS stuff. I know different areas are different, but the ones that are in DHS custody, they're just kind of your chronic runaways. And it's, if for us and things to think about, and I didn't include it in this presentation, but I really want to stress to people, since we're talking about runaways, if I have a runaway who is, I'm concerned there's trafficking issues, and they are a reported runaway to Beaverton, I almost want them to land out of state. And the reason why I want them to land out of state is people need to know about the interstate compact rules for juveniles. So especially, this is more for law enforcement, because I have to, in a nice way, I've had to educate somebody in law enforcement on interstate compact rules. So if your runaway goes out of state, like maybe goes from Illinois to Iowa, and it gets found by law enforcement there, it doesn't matter if they didn't commit a crime. And I don't mean it in a way because I want them to go to a juvenile detention facility, but it allows me to, one, to get that juvenile, that minor, away from the trafficker. They're going to go to a juvenile detention facility. They're not going to be charged with anything, but they are held on a runaway status. And then the interstate compact, the ICJ people from like Illinois would talk to the ICJ people in Iowa, and they have to facilitate that transportation of that minor back to the home city. And that allows me to be at the airport or wherever. So I have, happens in California so many times where I get told, well, we're not going to take them. We're not going to hold them. And I'm like, well, here's the ICJ rules, and here's the ICJ contact person in your area. So research your ICJ, and you can go online, interstate compact for juveniles. Illinois reps or contact people. There should be a list, and know that, because use that as a tool, again, not to penalize. You're not, the juvenile's not being charged with anything. They're just being held by the runaway. But you need that time. One, it's a safety thing to get them away from the trafficker if they got moved out of state, and it allows you to then start building the relationship once they land, wherever they come back, either by it's usually by flight. And it's not something that your agency is going to pay for. It's not something my agency is going to pay for. There are funds, federal funds, ICJ funds that have to be used. And it's not we're going to, we'll decide if we're going to go through ICJ protocols. Yes, thank you, Steve, for putting that compact, interstate compact. I tell usually the supervisor, sergeant, wherever I'm talking to, like last time was, I think, Sacramento. Okay, no offense, but if you're not going to hold that juvenile, I'm going to put in my police report that Sacramento PD said they were not going to honor the ICJ protocols, and they were just going to let my minor go. And now the turd is in their pocket. If something happens to that juvenile or that minor, then that. So I didn't want to kind of get off topic, but I just found it's a good time, since talking about runaways, to talk about the ICJ protocols and rules for that.
Hey, Chad, with that, would this be, and forgive me because it's been a while since I wasn't working with child welfare, but this is like a great place to check in with DCFS and folks who do work with jurisdictions, crossing over jurisdictions, to kind of collaborate with them on what those policies and protocols are, or am I
Yes.
totally speaking? Okay. All right.
No. So if people have thoughts or questions about that.
Because it kind
Chad,
of
I don't have any questions about the interstate compact stuff, but as Jen mentioned, I do get a weekly report of the runaways in Rockford. And I look at the youth who have multiple runaways within a year, and then I review those reports, and I call the family and offer any community services to see if they need any help, see if they have any concerns going on. So that's kind of what I do with that runaway list that Jen was kind of talking about, that I try to take a look at every week.
Okay. Thanks, Jared.
okay. I don't think there's anything else.
Okay.
Emilio, you may be getting a lot of calls, so welcome. Okay.
Okay. Let's see here. So this is some of the. Sorry, I just had the sergeant. They're out and about looking for my traffickers soon, so that's good. But I can multitask. Multitasking is my friend. So if you're not kind of what Claudia was talking about, I think you said with your niece, and as far as, so seeking.com is a sugar daddy site, and it really took off a little bit before COVID, and then COVID time it kind of peaked. But it's a wide range of you can have your sugar daddies, and then you have your sugar babies, and it can be for anybody, you name it, that wants to be part of Seeking. They have different categories, sexual preference, gender preference, or what you're looking for. So in a 2-month period, when it really started to take off, I confirmed just in the Beaverton area, Washington County area, 24 minors on Seeking. Now, it ranged from, there is a guy, because all these creepy sugar daddies that are willing to pay just for anything. The sugar baby to talk to them, sugar baby to send photos, videos, or then meet in person for dinner or then for sexual contact. So I actually had people from Seeking. They wanted me to come train their people on the best ways to find minors. We didn't want to create any conflicts. I told them no, they're based out of Las Vegas, but I've talked to the owner, the person that owns Seeking, and I just told them my concerns. But it's still, I've had numerous undercover profiles on there. They have flagged all my IP address related stuff, all my devices. And I've told them, I said, I'm not doing anything. I'm locating minors and or the traffickers that are willing to have contact with minors, and they still won't let me do my job. So that kind of tells me what I need to know about seeking. But basically, I was having these, and I truly believe they didn't have traffickers. They had Johns willing to see them, but it's becoming so popular now with young girls and boys and people in the trans community, that because it's so easy. So you had this gal, she actually was a high school athlete that got a full ride to a Division I school for track. And she agreed to meet me on an undercover date at a hotel, didn't have a backup plan, didn't tell a friend, didn't have anything for self-defense. I would have been her, I truly believe, her first John. And I said, well, so why are you doing, you have, again, on the appearance, she has everything. What are you doing? And she said, my mom is, we don't have a lot of money. My mom's stressed out about me going to school and having enough money, and I wanted to alleviate some pressure from my mom. So again, she was willing to kind of put her safety aside and not really think about it. And I kind of went over everything with her. Hey, these are the possibilities I have seen happen. And it's a good educational time. I never saw her again, which is great. But so you have profiles like Seeking or websites like Seeking that are preying upon the young, I'm going to say young adults or older teens, and just getting them into awful things that they're not really, they're not being groomed, but it is an emerging trend where you're just kind of having them go in completely blind, where up front, if I had to pick somebody, I'd want somebody that was kind of, knew the dangers and was more street smart. These people being brought into this trend is becoming kind of so dangerous to the teens that, because they don't really know what to expect. And this is just another one. She was a minor. We had a UC date with her, but they get confirmation photos on who they are. She had, and I just told her, I'm like, hey, I told her I was interested in a high school student, and she says, well, I am, and she sent me a photo of her student body card for her school as a 16-year-old, and so I even told her up front what my interest was I wanted to have an underage girl as far as on the UC date, and it wasn't hard to find. This gal was unique. It show you, it kind of hits close to home. In one of her photos, it was reversed, but I mean, I live in a little town called Newburgh, Oregon, and I could see in the photo it was Newburgh backwards, and I was like, huh. And so I didn't tell what the boys was about, but I kind of took a screenshot and I said, boys, do you know her? And they're like, yeah, she goes to our high school. She lives on a vineyard with a huge house, and she plays very competitive club sport and talking with her, it was just bored, not a lot of friends, because she is so, she doesn't have a lot of a big social life. So she was using this as a way to, one, make money, and then two, develop a relationship. And again, it was an education thing for her that it could become such a dangerous thing. And that's why I think, going back to the whole thing, how early do we talk to people about this? This is a great example of, you could show sites like this and say, you know what, this is what could happen. This girl was one of the saddest ones. She was 12 on there, and she on Seeking, and she was willing to get in the date. I told her was going to be next to her apartment complex where she lived with her mom, and that we would have our time in the back of my SUV. So she was going to get into my SUV and have sexual contact in exchange for money. And again, just all the possible things that could go wrong if that was an actual John, or even worse, a trafficker, or somebody worse than that, that was somebody that maybe she wouldn't have come back. So, and it's sad that she had that written on her shoe, and I asked her for permission, and that was on her shoe when she came to see me. It says, please love me. And her dad, she said her dad had just left, as far as split from the family, and she was really struggling with that. And that was the reason that she was doing what she's doing, because she was hurting on the inside so much, and that was a way of her coping with that. So, these initial contacts with these gals or these minors are good, and educational time, but then getting them plugged into advocacy, getting them plugged into as far as if they a mental health aspect of it, just then using our MDT or our task force to say, hey, you know what, I came across this person, and let's do everything we can for her. And ultimately it's going to be up to her whether she wants to, how much she's going to engage. But I mean, shoot, we got to try. And you may not have if you're going off percentages on how often you're going to have a successful rescue, and they're never going to go back, you're going to be disappointed. But they say that on average, it's almost the 9th or 10th time for victims of trafficking where they will then make that decision to get out of the life. I mean, this one gal from overnight, prime example. I've been dealing with her since she was for about 4 years now. Put 2 pimps in prison. She has a daughter, and now she was very hard on herself last night. Like, Chad, I said, once I have my kid, I was never going to do this again. But the pimp knew what to do. He knew what exact thing to say, the exact way to groom her, set that hook. And of course, you know what? I'm going to offer nothing but support today, and say, encourage her, always do it. I've always told her, you can do it. And you can have, always know how to get a hold of me. And that's what she did. I mean, she took time to call me last night. Didn't have to, but Linktree, another emerging trend, hand raise.
Yep. Go ahead, Joanna.
So I was going to type this, but it's probably too long. So what this is making me think of, and I'm an interviewer, so I talk to kids, everywhere from 3 on up, and kids are becoming so comfortable online, and it's so nonchalant for them to get nudes, to be requested to send nudes, that they become almost like immune, and they don't see the danger that it leads to. I think they're just becoming too comfortable with it. And I don't know, I'm not in the prevention side of it. I have a general idea of what happens, but I don't know how much education is being done with kids. But I talk to 12-year-olds who are sending stuff all the time, and it's like no big deal until it gets scary. And then it's gone too far, so.
Yes, and it's almost, you get in situations where then they get coerced enough to be involved in that lifestyle. They get groomed, and then when they want to hit the ejection handle, and everyone's, it seems that almost as things progress, as older they get, that point of hitting that ejection handle gets closer as I guess the picture of the plane going down, and that's like, some of them will hit that ejection handle way up in the sky. And then as they get older and they get more experience, they go through more I call them pitfalls, and they get closer and closer to the ground before they're going to hit that ejection handle.
Well, they get themselves to that point of, like you said, agreeing to meet with somebody. Sometimes they're so young that I don't think they even understand the ramifications of that. It's so impersonal to them when they're just at a keyboard and, looking at pictures or sending pictures. And then when it becomes real, they're not capable or, wise enough to be able to extract themselves then from that situation, and they get in over their heads. And that's when it gets
Right.
really scary.
It does, yes. Yeah, thank you for that, Joanna. Linktree, I'm seeing it more, and that's a way for on this ad. This is an example of one of the ads. And then you have the link tree for her in there. And that is just basically it allows, now you have access to, and I'll show you kind of a prime example of it, but of the person's Twitter, OnlyFans, Snapchat, and Instagram. So it's just a way, if you have a link tree, it links everything together. So I don't have to go and search it. I'm like, well, gee, I want to find her OnlyFans, but I don't know what it is. And she doesn't put it in there. But so you go into the link tree. So just pay attention, ask them if they have it. Or especially law enforcement, or if you're looking at investigating this on the online ads, look for that link tree link to it. And it also may have the Cash App name as well, which would be good for down the road evidence as well. Strip clubs, we'll take a break here in a second. Strip clubs, that's actually a strip club in Beaverton. That's Anthony Curry there on the left. Prior to, that's one of the clubs that when the minor was run out of. Those other two, Mr. Toth is there on the far right, and he was a manager there, and they were running a 12-year-old prior to Anthony Curry's case out of the same strip club in a back room. So that strip club was, I could hit a pitching wedge to it from our old police department. The building is no longer there, but so I've had 2 cases and kind of helped shut that strip club down. But where strip clubs thrive in, I would say, Beaverton in Washington County or in Portland metro area, child trafficking as well. So I add that. So know your strip club. So I took the time to research Rockford strip clubs. And for those, especially on the law enforcement side or victim advocacy, but where you have strip clubs, you're going to have prostitution. It's the nature of the beast. It's unfortunate, but you're going to have that. So I make a point of meeting with management we have 5, 6 strip club. And it's a way to develop that personal relationship. Professional relationship, more on a personal level with that manager. And then it lets them know that, hey, I'm around. So if especially if you're a detective or an officer and it's part of your area, go introduce yourself, find out how they do their check-in process. Is there a possibility that people are letting in the back door? So just that's always been a trend of ours, that strip clubs lead to stuff like that. Why don't we, I'm going to leave this slide up because I want people to think about it. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? And then people think about this, because I'm going to want some feedback, because I will power through the rest. I don't know where I'm at with which chat, but yeah, I'll see people back at about 9. How about 9:05? So it should be 11:05 to you. Oh, I guess I got my strip club knowledge wrong. SM and SF isn't a strip club. Sorry. It's almost good I didn't know that, huh?
All right, so it's 11:05, sorry, 12:05 here. So why don't we get started?
If you don't mind, give me 1 second. I just got a message from my victim, and I just need to forward a text message to those people that are going after the dude.
Okay.
You guys almost get like a real life case study as it happens. Okay. Hopefully people had a chance to see my questions. And we don't have to answer all of them. I just didn't know if there were we wanted to have healthy discussions about, and this is hopefully a safe space for everyone. If people don't feel it's safe, I understand, is, the components and makeups of when we have multiple different allied professionals and groups representing. So any thoughts on any of those that people would like to either unmute or just comment on? And again, if not, we can kind of go on.
Can I pop in?
Yes, absolutely.
I brought this up at the last training on Friday. I'm a forensic interviewer, and so I work with law enforcement and DCFS. So I interview children who've been victims of, where there's an investigation of sexual abuse or physical abuse. And I've had a handful of kids that were either they were trafficked or they were possibly in that. And but we don't get very many. So that's what I brought up the last time, is that I'm not sure if we're identifying these kids or if they're being identified and they're not being prosecuted or they're not being investigated through law enforcement, which I do understand. Somebody said that not all of them will end up being investigated, but I just don't know whether we're doing a really good job in the city of identifying these kids.
Okay. Do you think that will, after trainings and then meetings, as far as groups coming together in a collaborative sense, maybe working harder to do that would kind of bridge those gaps of identification?
Yeah, and I think that as a city, we're like doing these trainings, and we've had several of these over the last few years. I know Jennifer's doing a lot to, coordinate these services and to do a better job as a city of handling these. So I do think that it's getting better. Yeah, definitely.
Good. Well, that's ultimately, as you folks, I don't mean to tell you this, the reason why that, I think trainings like this are important. You don't need necessarily the training of me coming and talking your ear off, but more just getting people to think about outside their normal or thought process towards whatever area of this that, that is important or pertinent to you. So,
Yeah,
anybody
can I add
else?
to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Juliana, and to the larger group too, from the City of Rockford Mayor's Office of Domestic and Community Violence Prevention, we have established a fairly new human trafficking task force. And so these series of trainings are really geared towards our allied professionals, to our task force members, and to really continue the conversation and education for our community around human trafficking, both on the youth and adult side of things. And really from my team's perspective, the education and identification is just so crucial. And so having, Jen Green present last week and Chad today, and the continuation of support from OVC TTAC, we're really looking to help to work on that identification process and bring in additional partners where we see that we're lacking. We've talked about the LGBTQIA population, talking about runaway youth, having juvenile probation involved with our task force, and different working committees. This is all kind of coming together. It's a slow process, but we need everybody's hands on deck for this.
And I'm sorry, Emily, I should have said that when I was, yes, the city has done a great job of pulling these people together. My office is part of that. And so I do see that we're coming together and addressing this area.
And I guess just have these, some of these thoughts or questions that, when you do start meeting is on a task force or an MBT, that they're just things that you just need to have real discussions about, because, it's not all sunshine and lollipops. I understand that. And we've had, spirited discussions on our end of things. And we will continue to, because I think, and I'll touch on this a little bit as we get into the next few slides, but it's just stuff that I don't always think about, of where you know, a different allied professional, that's their wheelhouse. And it's, you know, hey, Chad, you need to think of this. And you know, it doesn't matter how much time you have into these. You're not gonna always agree, but the end result should be the same of the goal. But it's also, I'm gonna miss things, and that's all part of it. And that's why we have to have these groups working together as one. Okay. So working together as one, have the same goal when it comes to the victims. And for law enforcement, victim-oriented investigations must be practiced. It's getting, having our patrol, especially working on our patrol. I know they didn't mean it in any ill will, but very early on when I first started doing these, it was, I heard one of the officers just say, you know, why are we doing this? They're, and apologize for language, they're just whores. That didn't sit well with me, and that person wasn't involved in any more of my missions. I never use the word prostitute. They're not, that's labeling them. That is putting something that, yeah, that's just almost like a verbal brand that they don't ever need to hear. I can prove a case without uttering the P words: prostitution, prostitute, or pimp. I can put a whole trafficking case together and to use other words than that. So that's just the beginning. That's just like bare basic of victim-oriented investigations, where you strip all that stuff away, and the names and the labels, and it's all what I'm going to do for this victim. Yeah, I still have, on the law enforcement side, I still have a responsibility to go after that trafficker. But again, a lot of this is, you're just literally almost a surrogate parent to this person, where you just have to invest a lot of time. And I have to remember that very first slide I showed you. If you don't want to work these, don't do them. You're not going to do anyone a favor. And if you're forced to work them, please go to your supervisor if there's something else that you could do. I'm not going to sit there and tell you how to do your job, but I'm just telling you that you're not going to enjoy it, and it won't be fun for anybody. So trust all sides. Everyone needs to work together. Have I been burned by some other allied professionals? Yes, but all in large, you just have to start trusting each other. But trust is earned. It's not, I know, I understand it's not an automatic thing. But you do that by having the meetings and info sharing as much as you can. There are some things that can't be shared, and I understand that from all sides, but all the stuff that, to be able to put that case together, trust is a must. And establish that multidisciplinary team. Like Emily's, I know that she's working hard on to getting that task, working hard on the task force. And I'm going to have the makeup of them here. So why the collaboration works, the need for a multidisciplinary approach to address the victim's needs, because I can't provide all the victim's needs. Mental health can't provide all the victim's needs. Advocacy can't. It's going to take the group. And I'm going to show you kind of, if we get to the case study, I think I'll have time to show you a good example of all that, of how all the different entities are needed. The need for ongoing contact after initial victim contact. It's never the local cases. Now, if I find a runaway from Bakersfield up here and she's a trafficking victim, and she'll get shipped down within 7 days back down to Bakersfield, that's more difficult. It's hard for me to stay plugged in with that victim. I will if they do, but I'll try to line somebody up down there. But the local ones, it is never a one and done contact interview. You're going to have a lot more interviews, a lot more things that need to be talked about. The prime example, the case of, keep going back to the case I'm working now. I've been involved in this girl's life for years now. The family, and they're very appreciative, but I've been involved in their lives. So it's a growing, the one contact will grow to multiple contacts. It's never a one and done thing. The need for outside normal business hours, availability to prep victims for interview and grand jury. The need for sharing information. We already talked about that, because these victims and survivors are commonly involved with more than one system, and the need to proactively identify victims and potential victims, kind of like I forgot who is the identifying them, and I think it's Joanna that was talking about that. But that's why the groups need to come together, because again, I'm not going to know everything. I have tools that I could do to find the victims, but I'm not going to be able to find every victim, every person out there. So that's the need for why the collaboration works together. So who sits on the task force? And these are just ideas on I think you probably have a lot of these already. And again, if you can call it an MDT, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it a gang, you can call it a cool group. I don't care what you call it. I mean, people like to say the word task force, and it's great. I now understand why you want to call that, but I don't care. Call it whatever you want, but have that same goal in mind, just to be able to work together and have that knowing that that's what these victims need. So your county DA, parole and probation, county juvenile department, forensic interview, advocacy center, culturally specific confidential advocates, domestic violence, transitional housing, school district, adult unhoused service, mental health, emergency room, law enforcement agencies, your child welfare, behavioral division, homeless youth shelters. It could probably be, other subsets of those, but if there's one that I'm not, that is on the list, add it in the chat so that people can add that to this list. But this is kind of the crux of what a good, solid foundational task force is going to have. People representing each one of these entities working together and having monthly, or at the most quarterly, or at the longest quarterly meetings. But the monthly meetings is kind of what needs to happen. That's what we do. Every month we have our trafficking MDT task force that meets together. Any questions or comments on that list? Okay. Claudia, let me know if something comes up on that.
Yep, so far not seeing anything. Under culturally specific, would that be because I think about the conversations we had, like LGBTQ plus community centers, things that are like outside of the box. Is that what you mean by those
Yes.
culturally? Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And I probably could have had a better word than saying culturally. Maybe I didn't use the right word.
No, I think it works. It's just defining kind of what that looks like, because typically, and this is off topic a little, but when we do like mass violence response, you go to, like missing, murdered, MMIW, that's missing, murdered Indigenous women, but we go to where the community goes, right? So where they're the most comfortable. So having those folks, that agency come to the table can be very powerful.
Right. And I would say on your advocacy, it would work best. I know we have your sexual assault or your maybe crimes against children advocacy, but we have one that's specifically for trafficking. So if there was a group that you had that was specifically for trafficking on your advocacy, that's better. Then that's good. It's I would say that's being more specific on that as well. Would be helpful. It's called Safety Compass, and that's who we use.
Yeah, and then somebody put in MMIW, but I think tribal communities, because the trafficking on First Nations and tribal communities is unprecedented. So
yeah.
Can I say something real fast? This is Jen. mean, we do work with indigenous population groups here in our community. So even though they aren't on tribal land, so it's maybe worth thinking that. But in Chicago, we also have an epidemic of missing and murdered Black women and girls. And so that may also flow into Rockford, or maybe, another population to think of.
Yeah, good idea, Jen.
Also, I'm just thinking with that immigration legal
Oh, yeah.
services, maybe somebody else to invite.
Yes. Good. Thank you, folks, for input on that. And these are just examples. And again, it's not a set way to do it. This is something that works well for us. And so we have like almost different teams. So we have like a triage team that you have, and you can kind of see what it's the initial when we find that person. So we have the people you see around that bubble, around that victim participant is kind of our initial responding team in a perfect world. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes maybe emergency housing isn't needed. But basically that is our model that we like to go off of. And then we have a stabilization team, which is then more on the back end of, or a little bit after the triage. We have advocacy, transitional housing, ongoing medical, prenatal care, law enforcement therapist, juvenile counselor, religious community, alcohol and drug support network, school, CPS. Again, not set in stone. Every community is going to be different. Some smaller communities, like what was talked about in Iowa, isn't going to have all the ability to do all this. This is just examples of what has worked well for us. And but I know many other task force and disciplinary teams that are set up different. But I just wanted to kind of put an example forward for you folks on what works well. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that?
No, but somebody did mention working with lived experience experts on the task force. Is that something, or survivors? Is that something that Chad and Jennifer, you've seen?
I'll answer that first. I've seen it. I do know some of our advocacy group or advocates that are specific for trafficking are survivors. My personal opinion, if it's for the role of having life experience survivor, I kind of want to keep them more maybe on the stabilization team on the back end of things. If I'm able to have all these other people in play, it's more of a kind of a game time decision. It just that's just, I'll just kind of leave it at that. Jen, I don't know if you have different thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think survivor input is critical to any of the work, that your community is going to do around human trafficking. And obviously you want to look for survivors who are not still actively being victimized, right? And make sure that they have the support that they need, to be, because even when someone has exited the life and they might be a trafficking or a survivor leader or working in the field, I've worked with many survivors along the way who, while doing this work, still need ongoing support. And so, but they are the most important voice at the table. So if you don't have that kind of survivor leader, there are other ways to do this through evaluation processes or interviews or feedback sessions. And I think it's a little bit different with law enforcement side, but for sure, when you're talking about social services and community response side, you have to have their voice at the table.
Yeah, I think I was thinking more on case specific, having that bringing them along to be involved in the care for a case specific. I think I do want them on the general task force. I was just thinking, if I have, unless they're an advocate, I just wanted to keep them separate a while away from my victim from, if they have other support than a survivor that's acting as pretty much as a role as a survivor while the investigation is still kind of fresh, if that makes sense.
Okay, I don't
Okay.
think there's anything else, so.
Okay. Trauma-informed services for victims targeted online. So the trauma, again, victim-centered or trauma-informed services for people targeted online should address the recruitment method. Recruitment methods, we already talked. Again, you're not going to know, but you're going to hopefully figure those out as the case is going on or as information is coming forward. The vast majority of people recruited online are contacted through direct messages by someone approaching them romantically, setting that hook the best way that they can. Therefore, they experience relational betrayal, which may further erode their trust in others or their confidence in their ability to discern between safe and unsafe people. So not only is the trafficker messing him up for, what's going on and making him do things, but now how hard is it for like me as law enforcement to gain trust of a victim who's already been betrayed by somebody who they put a lot of faith into. Now I'm coming in as a stranger, asking them very intimate details about what's happened and why should they trust me. And so that's what I tell when I teach law enforcement. I'm like, generally the first time you talk to a victim, you're going to get lied to, and if you get upset by that, then these aren't the cases for you. It actually makes sense to be lied to or minimize the details, minimized to on the front end. If I'd be actually more red flags may go off if I actually believe that a victim was telling me the truth the entire first time I ever met them, because it doesn't make sense for them to be completely open to a law enforcement detective right off the bat. That's just my experience I've had. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Kind of makes sense. Mental health support to process these feelings of betrayal and education about healthy boundaries and healthy communication can set people up for success in building safe new relationships moving forward. Creating that new norm that I had talked about earlier, super important. And everyone, and I ask, who are the allied professionals that can assist in providing mental health? I put that question in there because we all can. Now, am I a mental health expert and provider? No, but you can offer mental health support no matter what position you're in. It's just encouragement and listening to them. And it's all positive mental health. It's something that we can all do, but obviously you still want to have mental health experts in play on your task force. But mental health support is something that we can all work on doing and providing to these victims and survivors of trafficking. So all right, this worked out good. So I'm going to talk about a case study, and I picked this one. It's probably the more unique and more extensive familial trafficking case study. But I also picked this one because it has the different components of everyone that was needed to make this come into play and that are still being used today. So this is the reason, and if anybody has any questions or thoughts or things they want to comment on, feel free. We don't have to wait till the end. So the overview. It's a 3-year stretch of investigation and prosecution. Started from me just monitoring Backpage, and that's people, if you've been around this long enough, will know that's how long ago it was when Backpage was up and running. Fairly easy to find minors on Backpage or victims of trafficking. We had indicted and convicted 5 suspects. I will talk about the family dynamics, complicated logistics. It centered around one teenage girl, we'll call her Kay, and it involved all these entities, allied professional groups, and this is probably just the tip of the iceberg of what we had. So we had all these people, Kay's in the middle, and we'll talk about each one, but yeah, I know that's not everybody, but I couldn't fit everything in there. But on the bottom left is our advocacy group, Safety Compass. They're still playing a huge role with Kay in her life. So we'll talk about that. So the overview here started back in March of 2018. And basically what I do is that I just go and I look for indicators, and it's pretty much a whole other class that I do on online investigations of ads. And it is, I just look for people that look young, and I'll go and I'll check phone numbers and databases and see if I can determine if the person is underage. That's the primary, with me being the only person working these things out of Beaverton, I have to unfortunately do priorities. So finding minors is my number one thing. And that's what I have, that's my number one priority. And then going after those traffickers, either that are trafficking minors or are trafficking victims through force, fraud, and coercion. And then it's everything else is just, if I can get to it. But that's kind of my main thing is that. Initial challenges, gaining cooperation, the victim going MIA, overlapping systems, and distrust. We'll talk about that. Using challenges to our advantage, evidence without victims and witnesses, picking low-hanging fruit and overlapping systems, using additional resources. So that's the timeline when the 5 suspects are charged. The final trial was in January 2021. So I'll talk about awful things that, keeping the victim having to testify over and over and over again was something I wasn't thrilled about. But when we have 5 suspects, sadly, things needed to happen. Strategies, impacts, and aftermath. So how it all started, March 9th, I was reviewing the escort ads, and I located this following ad, and I sanitized them a little bit, but basically I saw this, 4 photos. There was a phone number, and I went in and researched that phone number and saw it was associated with 2 people, a Jill Fisher and then her 17-year-old daughter, Kay. So that's more of the, again, if you look at those photos, playing detective, you see a couch, a table with some pink lights. Already I could kind of, okay, those photos are probably taken at a residence, not a hotel. You can see a close up there. So small frame gal could be, play the age game, could be 15, could be 21, 20, low 20s. We don't know. So that's just all part of it. You're not going to see on the escort ads where they're saying that the girl or the boy or the minor is under the age of 18. It's all going to be 18 and above. So you have a photo of her there. Then there's one it's like there's a journal that says, "Hi, my name's Sadie, I'm 19." It's just very odd to have that. I'm very sweet, fun, honest, call for, and it gives the services down there. FS full service, GFE, girlfriend experience, or body rub. So basically all the information I needed for it to be a prostitution related ad. And I researched a number again, came back to Jill Fisher and her 17-year-old daughter, Kay. And that's Jill Fisher. She was the one by the name of Jill Hansen. She was married, you'll see there, to Donnie, having 3 kids, Christian, and then her two daughters, C and K. Again, I'm going to not use their names as a way to protect them a little bit. And so you had Jill there on the left, Kay there on the right, who I believe is Kay. And just even with the yellow circle there, that person resembles the person in the ad there on the right. Also, I knew this was the right person because on her Starbucks name tag, it had her name Kay on there as well. And I got these from Facebook. So again, using social media. We already talked about that. So on March 9th, I sent text messages to the target number to arrange an undercover date. Prior to the date, I received numerous photos of what I was told was it looked to be this frame wise, the same girl from the ad. Again, I believe these photos were taken from a residence, and I'll explain venue for everyone. If you're doing any of these cases and you have photos, regardless of law enforcement, you want to figure out where the photos were taken, because that's going to add to your venue. It could be additional charges elsewhere if they're taken out of state, but always be thinking in your mind, be thinking venue. Where were they taken at? So make the date. I had seen Jill and a male subject leave the residence prior, because I was watching prior to when I was going to arrive when they thought I was going to arrive at the date. And then knocked on the door, and Kay was contacted as the only occupant inside. Super skinny, just didn't look healthy. Now, when we talked about social media and ways that some possibly recruitment or how the trends, well, just know that if they have, if they're being trafficked, they're probably going to have all your Twitters, your Facebook, your Instagrams. They could have their accounts there. So, she had Sadie Sin under those 3 Sadie Sin there. So she had Twitter and all ways that she can communicate and talk and direct messaging to other people to arrange dates. So not your traditional, using a text number or whatever. And then that one is there. So found that. So in the bedroom, well, that's the living room. The living room is where Kay slept at. That's her bed. On the nightstand, and that red circle were condoms with a sales receipt. And again, I'm going to keep reminding you, all this happens me just researching an ad. Didn't have any intel or anything like that. Just kind of blew up from there. That's the location that actually bought the condoms right down the road earlier in the day, right? So right before the date. So I kind of put that in my back pocket for research later. Found the lingerie, matching lingerie from the ad. So again, that's just matching up. I want to match up as much of the ads as I can. But that's hanging in the closet. Remember I said about venue? You have the fireplace, you have where the plug, the outlet. So I'm fairly confident that the photos were taken that I received of Kay were taken by somebody, unless you have some self-timer, which I don't think they even hardly make those anymore, but and this is the same, that's in the living room. So it may be kind of silly, but again, this isn't just for law enforcement. If you're in any situation that if you have a photo and you're trying to recreate where that photo was taken at, go that extra mile and to just take what would almost be, I try to get the same angle, make that same angle. And if it's something you can give law enforcement, but again, they're going to want that. And law enforcement do the best you can to just find that exact same area minus the person in the photo. And that's powerful to show a jury. You show a jury these two, this side by side and this side by side, and there's no jury that's not going to say those weren't taken there. So in looking at Kay's phone, I see that number for Mamacita. That's going to be mom. And if you remember, that's the same number in the ad. So already I'm thinking, if that's the same number in the ad, who was I talking to? Most likely probably going to be mom arranged that date. So, and then in the text thread, I found the photos sent from Mamacita to Kay. So mom took those photos of Kay and sent them to me. So now the charges on mom are starting to kind of materialize. So who is the family? We have Kay. Who is she? 17-year-old, addicted to meth and heroin. Been raised by mom the majority of her life. Very impulsive behavior. We'll talk about that. Married at age 17 to Robert Grayson. Mom married her. Robert Grayson was in his 30s and a career criminal when mom married Kate after Robert. Been to drug treatment in Utah. Younger sister C, 15 years of age, addicted to meth and heroin. drug treatment, March 2018. Now you know why it's very important to have a drug and alcohol therapist or counselor tied to your task force, your MDT. Animosity towards mom and her boyfriend, Donnie Davies. That's Jill Fisher. Who's Jill? 46-year-old mother of 3, previous sex worker when Kay and C were young. She actually was, I know I'm going to age myself. Remember the Yellow Pages? Or that's how she would advertise out of a brothel in the Yellow Pages. So that's when you rip the old Yellow Pages, that page out, and put it in your back pocket. In a relationship with Donnie Davies, addicted to meth, experienced in prostitution in the drug world, online ordained minister, married off Kay. This is Donnie Davies, 40 years of age, in a relationship with Jill Fisher, construction worker, criminal history of drug offenses and property crimes. I mentioned Robert Grayson, 35, career criminal, convicted felon, married to Kay with mom's consent, sexually abused Kay since she was 16, transported Kay between California and Oregon on a drug-fueled crime spree. So my initial interview with Kay, I'll just go real briefly, that she denied the postings that I'd found online. She says she confirmed the photos were personal photos that her boyfriend took that had been sent to me. So absolving mom of anything. And remember, this is what you're going to have in most likely in familial trafficking cases, but also in just your victims and their traffickers. You're going to have them, they're going to blame other people, and that's normal. Stole mom's iPhone, mailed it to Arizona to a subject named Marvin Randall. I called Jill while I misspelled interview. I apologize for that. While with Kay, she received a phone call from Donnie's phone, not that target phone number that I originally had. Thanks. So they're smart enough. Jill's very smart. I asked both Jill and Donnie to come back to the residence. Well, Jill arrives alone and she does not have her cell phone. She said she lost her cell phone 3 to 4 days ago. She confirmed the number I was texting was her phone number, but doesn't know how. And there was some messaging that I spelled. Interview was bad there too. I apologize for my misspelling of interview. And that there was actual text messages while I'm at the door, knocking on the door, that Kay had sent to Jill saying mom, and she goes, I gave him the different address. Jill never reported her phone stolen, never tried finding it. She confirmed that Kay was a meth heroin addict. And when confronted about the text messages that had been sent to her phone, Jill denied it was her and that somebody's pretending to be her. So the follow-up with Kay, I went back in and talked to her. She admitted to going on 2 prostitution dates, gave specific information. She wired money. She kept bringing up Marvin Randall, communicated with Marvin Randall via an app, and she deleted it when I was on the phone. Repeated that the boyfriend took her photos the day before the EC date. Mom was not involved in any way and consented to me having access to her seized iPhone. And so all that, I mean, that's all in day one. And that's how complex these things can be. So it'd be the questions after day one is, why didn't Donnie come back? Where was Jill's phone at? It was clear that Kay was protecting mom. And to what degree? Why'd she bring up Marvin Randall? What is it to throw me off? Did Kay really have a boyfriend? And who are these Johns that Kay saw on these 2 prostitution dates? So the next day I made contact with Jill, and all her belongings were gone from the apartment. She didn't know where Kay was at and said that Kay lied about shipping the iPhone to Marvin Randall. And so I went to Walgreens where the condoms were purchased. And who do you think I saw in the video? That was Donnie Davies that purchased the condoms. So I went and talked to Donnie Davies. Said he purchased the condoms just hours before the UC date. When questioned, Donnie admits to purchasing the condoms, but said they were for his personal use and that Kay stole them from him. So we're going into day 2. And again, a lot of this is me juggling my other caseload and this. And if you're from a smaller agency, that's what you're just going to have to do. So now that Jill is now confessing more and more, she confessed to smoking meth with Kay in the apartment. So not only was she trafficking Kay, but the smoking meth with Kay in the apartment, but that Kay provided the drug. She didn't want Kay to run away and felt that smoking drugs would keep her at home. And that here was a photo in Kay's phone that shows mom with a meth pipe right there. So, and this is where it kind of gets interesting. I didn't arrest mom, and we'll talk about it. Eventually happened, but I'll give you a hint. She was the last one I arrested out of all that group, and charged and indicted. I made that decision because she was my best way to get the other ones the evidence I needed. And I know that didn't sit well with people, that how could I let a mom who's trafficking her daughter and smoking drugs with her daughter be left out and about? And that's just a decision that I ended up making. And I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, but I can guarantee you I wouldn't have got nearly everyone else evidence to convict anyone else if I did that. So that's just a decision that folks are going to have to make, and that was a decision made with parts of our task force. I'm glad we had that, and it was discussed. And again, there are people that disagreed with me, but ultimately it was the DA and I that made that decision. I don't know if how things would have happened out of the Rockford area, but that's what happened in Washington County. So Joe made an official report, and that Kay was trying to make it to San Diego. San Diego has just been a bane of my existence with Kay, and I'll tell you about that. I promise you we'll finish by 10. Well, it's already 9:47. So she went to on her way down, and so I had the bus taken off. Remember when I said if they're going to run, I want my trafficking victims to go out of state. And so I tracked. It's hard to track a Greyhound bus. Tracked a Greyhound bus to Fresno. She's found on there. Took her interstate compact. They held her in custody. Went to a juvenile facility in Fresno. Flew back to Portland. She was held on a warrant too that Robert Grayson got her involved with in stealing her grandma's car from California to Oregon, but that's nothing I did. But she was on a flight, so got her back to Oregon. The logistics: she was endangered runaway, trafficking victim, juvenile delinquent, all these different things that we're dealing with. What about the indictments? All the while I'm trying to build trust with her, because that was hard to do. She stayed in custody. Jill comes clean about everything. I'm not going to go over, but pretty much Jill confessed to everything. Trunk, iPhone left in the car, deleted the data, but defended Donnie had nothing to do with it. Jill took her on 2 prostitution dates, Kay on 2 prostitution dates, knew was exchanged sex for money. Said that prostitution and drug use was a way for her to connect with her daughter. Still more awful things. Again, people were like, please go arrest Jill. And I'm like, no. I felt that with Kay out of the picture and in protective custody, that allowed me to build the case. If it would have been different if Kay had direct contact with mom still, that would have been an issue. But I figured with Kay out of play, that it gave me some time. Jill identified the person that created the ads as Marvin Randall, that he lived in Arizona. He was the previous pimp for Jill. So how it's a whole life everything connects. So Marvin Randall was Jill, who ran the brothel that Jill worked at. Jill learned all this stuff about trafficking, prostitution from Marvin. Now Jill's imparting this great wisdom to her oldest daughter, Kay, as a way to make money. And then Marvin Randall actually babysat Kay and C when they were younger. It's Marvin Randall. Who's James Keenan? He was one of the prostitution dates. Basically, I took over Kay's identity, and with her consent, and I arranged a prostitution date with James Keenan to come back and pick up at a 7-Eleven near Kay's residence. And he was in the possession he was retired law enforcement out of New Jersey. So he had done his 20 years and retired and came out and worked out of the Portland International Airport de-icing planes and plane maintenance. So he admits to taking the photos, to actually smoking meth with Kay. He's the one that gave her the lingerie. Jill meets with the U.S. attorney and discussed James Keenan with the prosecutor and involvement in trafficking of Kay. Basically, Kay arrived back in Portland. I have an interview with her with an advocate at the FBI, and she discloses pretty much gives all the info on James Keenan. Keenan was indicted, arrested, and convicted. We did him through the feds and even through the federal system. He was convicted and charged and got indicted and sentenced to 60 months in prison. So that's the best we could do out here. And then they ran a thing out in his home paper and they weren't happy about it, but oh well. So hope he's probably going to be out soon, if not already. So Kay goes to inpatient treatment up in Spokane. And that is advised that I was advised by Jill that Kay had run away again with 3 minors from the juvenile facility. And what do you think they got on? A Greyhound bus. And they're going down from Spokane to Tri-Cities area. I had to track the bus yet again. And Kay leapt out of the window when the bus was stopped. And after foot pursuit, she was taken into protective custody again, mandated back to Washington County. Again, she was held in custody because she's out of state. Donnie comes back into the picture. Donnie, Kay said that during, again, I'm building trust with Kay, that she had, that Donnie had given meth to her younger sister, Coral. Sorry. I knew I'd mess up one time and say a name. In the interview with C, confirmed Donnie did sexually abuse her and gave her methamphetamine numerous times. We later arrested him. And I'm going to just go through this. Basically, Donnie would even brought meth to Kay when she's at inpatient drug treatment. So that's how bad of a person Donnie is. Actually brought meth to her to smoke while at treatment. Indicting Donnie, Jill, all 3 girls got on board about Donnie. It was great. You had C was in California, Kay was in juvenile detention and DHS custody, and he was indicted and pled guilty to 70 months in prison for child sex trafficking, distributing drugs to a minor, and sexual abuse, hands-on offenses of C. I know I need to go quick. I'll be done in a few minutes. Jill needed to be indicted. She knew that. Why did we wait? Why didn't we indict her federally? And how do we tell C and K? The lead up, basically, Jill was indicted. Kay had running away again, back to California to San Diego. She's found in an attic. So basically we had Kay transported to our courthouse, didn't tell her mom was going to be indicted until right before she went to the grand jury. I felt awful. Kay looked at me. She didn't have anybody else now in her life. And she said, you took away the only thing I had left in my life. Who am I going to go to now? And I didn't have an answer for her. It was one of the 2 times I've actually cried at a court hearing. I've had invested so much in getting and helping to try to help this with Kay that I just felt awful doing that, because Jill was actually doing so well. By the time she was indicted, she had 2 jobs. She'd been clean, but she knew she made some bad choices. So she pled, serving 6 months, and she's going to get out soon. So now Kay's 18, no parents, no guardians. She was on parole for that stolen vehicle thing. She kept getting in trouble. Robert Grayson, we were never able to charge him for the marriage because of Oregon law. That marriage saved him from being indicted for rape and sexual abuse. And last but not least, Marvin Randall, finally got him indicted for he had agreed to repost Kay. I used Jill to see about Marvin going to repost Kay, and he was indicted. He lived in New Mexico then, and he went to trial. Again, Kay had to testify again. He said he had his brain is full of mush at the moment, and he couldn't tell why he posted Kay. Knew that Kay and Jill had drug problems, and posting them online was the best way that he could help them and the family. Show you the mindset of him. And let's go through that trial because I want to get to the end. So we wanted to help her get her divorce from Robert Grayson since she was married. So this is a photo of her at her party. We see the thing on the balloon, just divorced. You know, I'm not saying that divorce is a good thing, but on this one it was, because I didn't want her to have that last name of Grayson. So she sent me she posted this photo. She is ups and downs. Probably about a year ago, she overdosed. C actually called me and told me that her oldest sister Kay had warrants down in San Diego. We had her set up because she was taking a lot of fentanyl. She overdosed on fentanyl when the law enforcement was coming in. She had to be Narcan back to life twice. But she's getting off parole now, or she's off parole. She's in transitional housing in the Oregon area. I don't know how it's going to go for her. All that to be said is the takeaways. We all had to work together and we needed to fight for her because people like Kay need that and deserve that. Sorry, I went through that a lot quicker than what I wanted to, but I also want to be respectful of your folks' time. Those are questions. Email is the best way to get a hold of me if you have any questions, comments. Does anybody have any questions right now in the 4 minutes we have left?
So I don't see any in there, but I know just one question. Have you seen any recruitment outside of like detox facilities? Seeing that C and K obviously we're actively using. I've heard that in other cities.
We don't have, they were part of the NARA tribal community out here. And so they had access to resources for inpatient. So that's more of the detox that they would do.
Okay.
But then when you have people like Donnie bringing meth into the treatment facility, which irritated me. And it,
Yeah.
that didn't do Kay a lot of good. It's being the impulsive like her mom. It's just a byproduct of mom, that very impulsive behavior that she just for no reason when she gets, and again, I can't say that I understand her, but she has yelled at me. She's called me the worst names, but then she keeps me updated. And so I heap praise when I can, and I encourage when I can. And because the minute if I were to tell her, you know what, yeah, you kind of failed, I would never do that. And just these victims, survivors, they need as much encouragement and support outside. And I don't care about being law enforcement after a while. It's just what can we do to put this person on the right path? And that's why you can't be discouraged when they fall off the wagon.
Sure. It's a process.
It's a
part of their
process
process of
yeah.
being independent and not with those folks.
Yes.
Right. Joanna says it could be a whole other training to discuss how to support survivors after they leave the life.
Yeah, and I think it's just stuff I've been dealing with last night, this morning, that it could be a whole thing. And yeah, it's already the victim is from victim now, my past survivor from this morning. She's just blowing my phone up, which is good. It's an encouraging thing to that they're staying connected to people that always, so no one wants to talk to a detective. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. But
so yeah, connected to safety. So yeah, I mean, if that is something, Joanna, I'm not sure what organization you're with, you can always request that type of training through OVC TAC. Chad, if you don't mind, stop sharing so I can put up the evaluation QR code. Bess did drop the code in the chat. Oh, there it is. Let me share my screen so you all can see. Hopefully you all can see that. You're more than welcome to use your personal device and take a picture of that QR code, and it should lead you right to the evaluation. And also the evaluation link is for today. This is a lot of great information. It's a lot of heavy information. I definitely, it's something that, it's hard to see, but it's important to understand kind of how things process and flow when working with survivors. So just make sure that you all allow time to kind of take care of yourself. And Chad, you too. Thank you, and Jennifer, for the work that you do, and specifically to Emily and her team at the mayor's office for kind of bringing this, for allowing OVCT Tech to bring this to your community. So, Chad, I don't know if you have any other closing words, but we're
No,
1
I was
minute
actually
over.
gonna type something and say thank you so much. I know having one person talk to you for that extended period of time can be sometimes mundane. I hopefully I kind of wanted to throw as much case study stuff and other personal to kind of keep people interested and not just kind of lecture to you. So hopefully I did that, but I really appreciate everyone tuning in to this morning. It's encouraging to me. So
Great. Well, thanks everybody. We're going to go ahead and please fill out the evaluation. We always like feedback, always want to make sure that we're getting good messaging out to the field. So thank you all for everything that you do for survivors in your community. And we'll go ahead and end the session today. Thank you so much.